Come on. You know, I just realized I've been using the Sony A7IVs since they came out, which is about 3 years ago. I shot probably over 100 weddings with them, and I've never done a review on those cameras. I don't know why. Maybe it just fell through the gaps. Maybe I was having a bit of a break from YouTube at that time. I've been cleaning up my gear today, and I decided today's going to be the day where I give you guys a review on Sony A7IV. After 3 years of professional use, I feel like I know this camera like the back of my hand. I know all the settings. I've ironed out all the little quirks that the camera has, which are not many to be fair. The camera isn't perfect, but it's pretty bloody close to it. So let's just get straight into it. I'm gonna chuck some RAW files down in the description so you guys can just have a play if you wanna see what the RAW files are like. Maybe you're thinking about buying this camera in 2024. If you guys saw my D750 review I did not long ago, which is like a 10, 12-year-old camera, I think the A7IV is going to be one of those cameras that just lasts for ages because it's so close to being the perfect camera for pretty much everybody. You can pick one up now secondhand in New Zealand for about $2,500 NZ. So first let's just jump into like ergonomics and how it is to use and why it's a big step up from the A7 III or any of those older bodies. So as you can see, this is my kit. Obviously I'm filming now on the Tamron 17 to 28mm 2.8 and the Sony A7IV, and then I have my second one here, which is pretty well used. This is my older one with the Miki grip on there from the A9 II because it fits the same. In terms of reliability, I've genuinely not had any problems with my A7IVs. They do seem to be a lot more reliable than the A7 III, although I shot the A7 IIIs for about the same amount of time and I never had a problem with those either, but I can acknowledge that the A7 III did have a more regular issue with the shutter. So ergonomically, the cameras are fantastic. I do have quite large hands, so I've always had to use these grips on them just to make them a little bit more comfortable. In terms of usability and what made this camera so much better for me over the A7 IIIs and all those older bodies was this hybrid switch here, so going between photo and video. Oh, here comes the rain. It's going to get pretty rowdy in here. We'll AI my voice and see how that sounds. So this photo video switch really changed up how I use the cameras for hybrid shooting. And in the A7IV, you can go into the menu and make it so it remembers different settings for each one. So for example, I can be in my photo mode. When I switch to video, it changes everything to like S-Log3 and the specific settings I want. Remembers, you can choose what you want it to remember basically. The only one I really wasn't that much of a fan on was the fold-out screen. Obviously for filming like this, obviously for filming videos like I'm doing for YouTube, it's much better having the fold-out screen, so I've appreciated that. But in terms of photography use, I really prefer having a tilt-out screen like the A9 series, or something closer to the A7R5 that has both options. It can tilt out or fold around, which is great. But overall, what I'm trying to say is ergonomically the camera is fantastic, and it was a big leap from the A7 III cameras. I think this was the first camera that Sony brought out that had, in slot 1 in the memory card, had dual use, so you could chuck a CF Express Type A card in it or an SD card, and the second slot was just SD card. The only thing I'll say with the CF Express Type A cards is it's only really useful if you're only shooting to card 1, because as a wedding photographer, I'm always shooting to dual cards as a backup. And having the UHS 2 slot in card 2 means you're limited to that in terms of the buffer anyway, so it doesn't really make any difference unless you're shooting just one card. I am using these pro grade, I don't know if you can see that, 480 gigabyte CF Express Type A cards. I'm using those in slot 1. To be honest, only because they were given to me to make a video on. I don't need cards that fast. However, I am using the pro grade UHS 2 cards usually, and they're plenty fast enough and I don't hit any buffer or anything like that. Sony also fixed the rear screen and the viewfinder. And the viewfinder on the A7 III series wasn't horrible. It definitely wasn't what I would call nice. And the A7IV still could do with some work, like the A7R5 and the A1 is still much nicer. But you know, it's good enough that I don't have any issues with it. I guess that leads on to image quality because that's what a lot of people are going to want to know about. And for me, it's one of the reasons why it's going to be one of those cameras similar to the D750 that just sticks around because it's just so good. When the A7IV came out, the images had much more accurate color. Now, I personally never really had an issue with the A7 III colors, just because I'm always shooting in RAW and you can manipulate them almost endlessly to get them as you want, but the A7 III images did take a little bit more work than what I was used to. The A7 IV came out and it just kind of changed everything, and the files were just much more accurate, way cleaner. There was kind of a nice boost in sharpness, and it wasn't just because of the megapixels. I think that the sensor itself was just a lot better. And overall, I've just been so happy with the image quality out of the A7 IV. It's great in low light. It has a really good balance of megapixels in low light. The next big thing for me was video. Like, this camera was such a huge leap in terms of video quality and just how you are able to use video, like with that dial they have on top. And now having 422 10-bit color and S-Log3 and having S-Cinetone and all those kind of profiles just made this camera such a beast for video. I heard some people on YouTube when this camera came out talking about how it's overheated. In the 3 years I've shot weddings all through summer here in New Zealand, I've never had any Sony A7 IV even come up with a warning that it was getting too hot. So yeah, 4K, whatever, it doesn't overheat, and that's just been really great. Obviously, the only thing I wish would be added to it at the time would have been 4K 50 or 4K 60 with no crop. But honestly, in my job, it hasn't really affected me because I hardly ever shoot slow motion anyway. And the times I have, because I'm using a 24mm and a 50mm most of the time, you know, when you go to crop mode in 4K 60, it just kind of gives you a 35mm anyway. It hasn't been a problem for me personally, but I think some people that might be an issue. It is really handy that, I don't think Sony advertised it, but the A7 IV does have dual ISO. So when you're shooting video in S-Log3, it has a base ISO of 800 and then a second ISO of 3200. It's not as good as the A7S III, which has the second ISO at 12,800, which is just great because you get to 12,800 and the camera just goes completely clean again. This has the same thing, but it's 3200, which is still great. So I'm shooting at ISO 3200 now. It's quite dark in here, it might not seem like it. I won't add any grain to this video. Usually I add grain to my videos because I just like the aesthetics of it. It just makes it a little bit less plasticky, but this one I'll keep it clean so you guys can see the image quality. The 422 part of the video, I don't know how much it matters to be honest, but having 10-bit color over 8-bit color from the old Sony cameras was a massive jump, and it just color grades so much better. So yeah, in terms of image quality for photo and video, this camera was a massive leap, and it's still gonna be a really solid camera for like another decade, I believe. So next, talking about the autofocus, that was also a really big leap. So the A7 IV was like the base level camera that Sony had for professionals or enthusiasts that came out with the real-time tracking autofocus, which was a massive leap over the previous generation cameras and still outperforms a lot of cameras that are coming out now. The fact that this camera that's almost 4 years old, I think, still outperforms a lot of new pro cameras that are coming out today. Not all cameras, some of them are still a little bit better than the A7 IV, like the Nikon Z8. I think the tracking is maybe a tiny bit better than the A7 IV, but when you take into account the price difference and how much newer that camera is, it's insane how good the A7 IV is. And the real-time tracking, honestly, I just don't really have to think about focus anymore. There is a bit of, obviously, user experience. I'm a professional, I've shot over 600 weddings, and this is my job full-time, so I really know how to use my gear. I've had that time and that practice put into it. But for me, the hit rate on this camera is like 99%. The autofocus has just been amazing, and it's the same with video as well. The focus is really smooth and accurate, and I just don't have really any complaints with the autofocus, other than maybe it could be improved slightly in low light, like really, really low light. Say on a dance floor, at a wedding when all the lights have been turned off. It still works well, but it could work a little bit better. So a couple of small minor things to talk about. The battery life on this camera is great. I can get through, I've never used more than 2 batteries for a full wedding, whether I've been doing hybrid or just photo only. If I'm doing video only, it does, I probably use 3 batteries for a 10-hour wedding, or like 2.5 batteries for a 12-hour wedding if I'm doing video only. But in terms of photo or hybrid use, I've never used more than 2 batteries for an entire 11-hour wedding. All right, now, bad things. There's not many. Honestly, if I'm trying to come up with things I don't like about this camera, the main one for me personally, which isn't going to apply to a lot of people, is the flip out screen. I'm not really a fan of that in terms of work use. For YouTube, it's great. But yeah, I would prefer what the new Sony A7IV screen is like, or just having a tilt screen. Like the Fuji X100V or something like that. The other thing is the shutter is pretty loud on the A7 IV. It's noticeably louder than some of the other cameras you can buy these days, and it's louder than all the new Sony generation cameras. It's not really bad, like it's still quieter than like most DSLRs, but it is a little bit loud, and I wish it was a little bit quieter. You know, if you're in a church and it's really quiet, you can definitely hear it. Which is just a little bit annoying for me. I don't have any other issues with the camera. It works great. It's been really reliable for me. I haven't had any issues with them. A really solid unit, and I'm going to be sorry to see them go to whatever replaces them next. If you guys want to see what I have in my kit, I'll show you guys quickly. Maybe I need to do another what's in my bag video, but yeah, this case is HPRC 2550W. Hard case that has roller wheels on it. So yeah, my wedding photography kit and video kit consists of two A7IVs, the Tamron 17 to 28mm 2.8, 50mm 1.2 G Master, my trusty old beaten up 24mm 1.4 G Master, 85mm 1.4 G Master, and the Tamron 28 to 75 2.8. This is a great all-round lens as well, and a perfect example of why the mount system is so good, just for all the options you can get. Hey bro, I'm just filming a video. I'll come see you in a minute. That was Gary from Photo Prints next door. If you guys want photo prints done and you're in Auckland, he does like framing, canvases, really nice quality prints. A lot of us professionals go to him for all our work, so I'll put a link in the description if you want to check out his website. He's just in the unit next door to us in Westgate here in Auckland. So I hope you guys enjoyed this really late A7 IV review. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one real soon.